one. Boom. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're thinking about outsourcing some of the software things that you're developing for you or your company, you're going to want to pay attention to this episode. Let's get this one started. Here we go.
Shut up and sit down.
Look, a business can give you everything you want in life. Prestige, wealth, freedom. It can also take everything away from you. This show is for those who are willing to take that risk. These are the real life stories of entrepreneurs. But before we start, I have one small favor to ask. Please leave a comment. It can be advice, critiques, tips, feedback, or share this with someone because your engagement is the most valuable and most powerful form of social currency. So thank you, and welcome to another episode of Business Bros.
All right, business bros, here we go. Today, we got a tech enthusiast and visionary entrepreneur tuning into the show. We have a trailblazer in the world of software development joining us, and he's an account executive at Aloa, a company that is transforming the way businesses approach software outsourcing. Our guest is all about pairing you with the perfect development partner through a blend of expertise and cutting-edge technology. He'll be sharing his insights into Aloa's unique approach, focusing on R&D rather than traditional growth. So if you're looking to enhance your tech projects with transparency, quality, and efficiency, then you're in for a treat. So let's welcome to the show, Mr. Dawei Li.
Quite the intro, bro.
You said you've done a couple of different podcasts so far. A few minutes in, how am I setting the bar for you, man?
It's pretty high. It's pretty high. I've never had an intro like that before, so thanks for hyping me up. So
yeah, let's do this, man. All right.
Awesome.
Software I feel like has been changing drastically over the last couple of years, especially with the emergence of AI. Can you give me a little bit of background about yourself? How did you find yourself in this type of business venture? And then where do you think it's going from here?
Yeah, definitely. My background is totally different. So I came into college as a pre-med student. I went to Vanderbilt University, and so fun fact, there's like 80% of undergrads wants to be pre-med, right? So I was one of those kids that got weeded out in Gen Chem. And so didn't think it was the right path for me. And my sophomore year, I decided to major in econ. So I switched my majors from neuroscience to econ, and then I met some co-founders along the way. My sophomore year, we started a few startups in college together, none of which took off. So it was just all kind of business ideas, building apps, random apps for different industries and stuff like that we thought we could disrupt and be a part of. So I graduated, and long story short, I couldn't find a job. And I was driving Lyft and Uber back here in Nashville, Tennessee. And just felt like it was really clear in that moment, like after a whole summer of being unemployed, that it was like it was a really good chance for me to pursue it full time and just jump straight in. So I didn't have any student loans, didn't have a car payment. My rent was super cheap. And just ended up jumping into it full time back in the 2017, beginning 2018. So that's how I found myself kind of building this new startup that we envisioned. So
I ignored my destiny once.
Totally did, dude. All right, so you started up in the tech space. You knew that apps and doing things with apps and that it was going to be a way that you were going to disrupt stuff, but unfortunately, you had some hiccups. You failed at some businesses. And I know that in the entrepreneurial space, there's always going to be hiccups. There's always going to be failures. But it's the ones that persevere that continue to make a difference. So walk me through that mindset. It hurt. You didn't do what you wanted to do the first time, but you kept going. What was it like being there, pushing through? And then how did this kind of transform you into where you're at today?
Well, luckily, a lot of those failures were while we were still college students, right? So we weren't like put out on the street or anything like that. We had a dormitory, we had a meal plan and all that stuff. So luckily, the first few failures, we were still students. I think the biggest failure, what I sensed was the biggest failure when I hit rock bottom was when I graduated as a Vanderbilt student with that econ degree, and I didn't have a job, and I came back to Nashville to drive Lyft and Uber, and just to pay for the bills, right? So that was, I think, one of my hardest seasons in my life, because especially when you go to a college like Vanderbilt and all of your friends are, having white coat ceremonies and starting law school and starting all these high paying jobs. And, I'm over here just driving people around town, which is not a bad thing. But I think, being a Vanderbilt student, my identity at least was so rooted in what I was going to be. Because everyone tells you you're going to be successful. You went to this top 20 college, and everyone around you is, like, in a sense, worldly sense, successful out of college, right? So, comparing yourself with your peers and all that stuff, that was a tough season. That was a tough, 6 months of my life for sure.
Heck yeah! All of a sudden, it's time to shit or get off the pot time, right? Like you have this expectation that's been
For real.
set for you way up here, and now you actually got to do something about it. And you're over here driving Uber. That's gotta fuel you. That's the thing that's got to push you to that next level. So let's talk about your business itself. What is it that you're selling? What is it that you're doing today? And like what is it that you're here to promote?
Why are you doing this?
Because I want to know.
So in order to understand the solution that we present, you have to first understand the problem, right? So the problem is software outsourcing sucks, and there's very few people doing anything about it to solve it and eliminate the pain points, to make the whole experience more palatable, more accessible, more easy, more smooth, and streamlined for the regular business. So you have the big businesses like Accenture and Deloitte and the IBMs and the Cognizants, where you pay these people, tens of millions of dollars to help you outsource software overseas. So companies like Google and Amazon, a lot of the household names that we know of, actually use these big companies to outsource software. So the what if question that we asked ourselves when we started Aloa was, what if we can make that more accessible for the everyday business, the medium-sized businesses, the small businesses, and the tech startups that don't have the tens of millions of dollars, but maybe just have a few $100,000 or even $50,000 or something like that to build a product and gain traction with their business or make their business more efficient, so on and so forth. So that's the industry that we decided to tackle. That we saw that as a huge problem in the industry and a huge pain point, and we could just kind of went after that opportunity to solve this problem for businesses. So the way in which we do that is through what we like to call a three-prong approach. The first part is we have a partner network of highly vetted software development teams all over the world in places like India, Eastern Europe, South America. We've gone through over 10,000 software development teams, and we've vetted about 12 of them that are extremely good. So we leverage these partners to help our clients develop their products, so that they know that they're working with some of the best teams from each region. So that's the first part, is having a pre-vetted pool of teams that our clients can work with, that they know they can trust, and they know that they have a successful track record of delivering successful projects for clients. Second part of it is holding these teams accountable, right? So developing a client success sort of structure and accountability monitoring structure to make sure that these teams are delivering what they're supposed to deliver on. So every 2 weeks, our clients get a developer performance report on how their teams are performing, so on and so forth. And we have a client success team that actually monitors these development teams on, how well the project is going. Are there any risks or potential fires that they can identify and help sort of eliminate? And then the last part is, we believe, sort of standardizing everything across software development teams globally. So here's a quick fun fact. There's actually no global standard for software outsourcing. A lot of it is pretty scattered. Companies do different things in terms of best practices and following development process. So we have team members that have worked for engineering teams at Google and Amazon as part of our co-founding team, and have brought in a lot of those processes that we then implement and enforce with our development teams. So on top of that, we have our own product, right? We are a tech company, so we are tech enabled and heavily tech empowered. So we have our own platform where our clients can manage their software development teams and pay out their teams seamlessly. So we provide that workflow for our clients, that standardized workflow, so that no matter where you choose to outsource, your experience is similar with us, whether it's a team in India or partner in Ukraine or partner in Colombia. That experience going through the Aloa process, using the Aloa product is going to be very similar.
Yeah, I have a guy that comes into our classroom, and he's an engineer, and he's having a hard time finding software jobs today here in the market. And I think the biggest issue with that is it's not that he's not good. It's just now instead of competing here in a local market, you're competing on a global market, which is kind of what you're describing. It's difficult when the skill set can be found all over the world. And you're trying to find a job here locally that's going to pay the same type of salary. That competition is going to be absolutely fierce. But I wanted to kind of focus my attention on the project scope. I know I've only tried to develop an app one time, and me as not knowing what it's like on the tech side, I have like a million ideas where I want to take this particular app. And it starts off with a simple idea, and then the scope of the project gets really, really, really crazy, and it's kind of hard to manage. How you talked about, the working with software developers, having that accountability for the developers themselves, and then standardizing the process, which is great. How do you do that from the other side? So when you pick up a client who's like me and wants to develop something, how do you kind of help them stay focused on getting from point A and completing point B before all these shiny object ideas kind of take the scope of the project to go crazy?
That's a really good question. Well, I also want to hear about your experience developing the app. Really curious about that. Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think it's different depending on like who I work with. So there's a spectrum of clients that we work with, right? From the directors of engineering to the CTOs, to the lead engineers, to the product managers at these companies, all the way down to, it's not like a hierarchy, but I'm just kind of going across the spectrum. The other side of the spectrum is the non-technical founder, right? I'm not sure which part of the spectrum you fall into, but when I work with non-technical founders, that falls a little bit more into the category of what you just said is like, okay, we might need to help them narrow down the scope. They have all of these ideas, right? The product, the typical entrepreneur, the product visionary, they have a lot of ideas of what they want to do, but they may not have all of the time and resources and the capital to be able to do what they all want to do. So, right. So what we come in to do is kind of consult them a little bit. I mean, we're not a tech consulting company by any means, but we kind of come in to provide that consultative approach to clients and say, hey, what do you really want to prioritize on? What is your business objectives? And how do we help achieve those business objectives through the intersection of your product roadmap? And not necessarily helping them make that business decision, but getting a good understanding of their business as a whole, their business objectives, business goals, revenue goals, or stuff like that. And then based off of that, we can make recommendations on, which direction we can steer them in terms of, hey, you might want to focus on this subset of features for your MVP, your minimum viable product. You might not want to spend $100,000 and develop this, huge, big application just to sort of prove your market hypothesis. You might want to focus on, 4 or 5 features instead of, a feature set of 20. Right.
No, that totally makes sense because that minimum viable product makes all the difference in the world. Otherwise, you're like Doc Brown.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
You need to have a destination.
That's right.
And that at the end of the day, that destination needs to be that minimal viable product. And I'm reminded of The Social Network. When you ever watch the movie about Facebook, today Facebook has so many different avenues, so many different places that it's like it has so many different products. It never would have got there if they didn't focus on the one at the very beginning to just make sure that it worked well and people liked it. And I think that's what you help a lot of these companies do when they're not tech enthusiasts, right? They're not the tech savvy companies. They're not
That's
the tech
right.
savvy founders, but you're giving them the information they need to help make an educated decision. It's definitely a new approach. We got Brandon here asking, the outsourcing saves HR dollars for sure and focuses on the results and can be a real part of the corporate culture. When you're developing some of these projects that you're talking about, how does it help the company in developing a company culture? Because I feel like some of these apps, some of these software products not only help internally, but they are designed ultimately to give the end user, the client, an experience as well. Do you guys take company culture into consideration when you're developing some of these softwares and products?
You're talking about the company culture for our clients, or
Yeah.
that's a really interesting. That's a really interesting question. I say when we're vetting our teams, uh, we take that into consideration for the teams that are our partners. So that might not be answering your question directly, but like that's the only time we take in consideration of company culture is what is the company culture of our development team and how they retain their talent and their resources. In terms of working with our clients, um, that's not an area of expertise. I say like we're here to advise them a lot on the product side, the technical side, product roadmap, so on and so forth. Um, that may intersect with company culture, but typically companies like to keep that separate. They like to keep the company culture thing with, a chief of
With that own
HR
department.
or like the chief people officer or something like that.
Fair
When I
enough.
work with someone like a CTO or like a VP of engineering, they're pretty detached from that side of the company. Although there may be some intersections if the company is like small enough. So let's say if a company is like, I don't know, 10 or 20 people, there could be some intersections there in terms of, how their product affects their, company culture.
Well, let's talk about the target demographic then. Who are you going after? Obviously, there are the big companies that definitely need some of this developers, but some of those big companies will just hire on people and just kind of have them work full time. So, who are you targeting? Who's the ideal customer for Aloa to have and to go after? Like, is it that small guy that's just getting started? Are you looking for some of those mid cap companies? What are you looking for?
Most of the clients that we've had historically worked with are tech startups that are funded. So, if your audience knows anything about the sort of funding stages, could be anywhere between pre-seed, seed round, all the way up to Series A, B, or C startup. So those have been the main demographic that we work with, and I think in the last year or two, we've kind of broken into a more medium sized business kind of, I don't know what you call it, marketplace. So that's anywhere between, let's say, 100 employees all the way up to 1,000, or maybe a little bit more. Um, and then, yeah, and then we've gotten the chance to work with some bigger companies as well, like on top of that. But that's more on the more rare side. So the majority of the companies that we work with are sort of small, medium-sized businesses. Small being tech startups that with products that are literally their entire business. So that could be a SaaS product or any type of product that a startup is building around, and then all the way up to sort of the medium-sized, enterprise type of companies where the product is part of their business, but is not their entire business. They have a lot of revenue coming in, and they're just using technology to streamline their workflow, making the company more efficient, or something like that.
Do you feel like there's less of these companies kind of in the pool? I feel like I've talked to a couple VCs here on the show every once in a while, and there's like as rates are going up, as money is not becoming as free and accessible. They're looking at companies that are going through burn rates and kind of stepping back a little bit on some of these companies and they're shooting for obviously some companies that could be cash flow positive right away, which is not always the case. But I'm wondering, when you're trying to acquire customers, are you working directly with VCs? Are you working directly with angel investors and kind of, piggybacking off that aspect? Maybe they're in that pre-seed round. Maybe they're already getting some of that funding and using that as a way to acquire customers. Or how are you guys getting customers today?
Yeah, most of it is actually done through our growth engine. Huge shout out to our marketing team. So we got a team of content creators and SEO specialists um, that create really good content, and we rank on Google for very popular keywords like software outsourcing or hire remote developers, so on and so forth. So if you just Google some of those keywords, we pop up, top 3 or 4 ranking on Google. So a lot of traffic comes through there, and that traffic is growing every single month because of the content. So we get a ton of eyeballs on our site, and then people convert on our site. But and then the other part is the sort of word of mouth partnership side of things, where we are, like you said, we are starting to partner with different VC firms because they see the value proposition and what we can provide for their portfolio companies. Um, I say with all of it, yeah, like you said, the high interest rate environment and all that stuff. I think that's like a pretty bullish case for outsourcing, actually. So, um, I think the first big shift towards outsourcing was the pandemic and people becoming more open to hiring a remote team. Whereas before, when we started in 2018, 2019, it was kind of a tough sell for some people because VCs wanted in-house developers, and that was um, the preference for a lot of investors was that was a status quo for the industry, the tech startup industry. I think post pandemic there's been a sentiment shift towards remote work where you can hire your developers anywhere in the world and it doesn't matter as long as they got the talent they can do the work and they can be autonomous, so on and so forth. And I think the next big shift is we're experiencing that right now is as the world, or at least the Western world goes into higher interest rate environments, as the recession looms closer and closer. It's already hitting, parts of Europe and countries like Germany really hard. China is experiencing deflation right now, which is crazy. Their youth unemployment is ages 15 to 24 is 21 to 22%, which is about I'd say like 6 or 7 times higher than the United States right now. And I do think it will eventually hit companies here too eventually. So I think it's just a matter of time until that happens, and I think when that happens, there will be a second major shift towards outsourcing because regardless of the economic environment, I think companies will still need to innovate, and tech will still be here. So tech won't just kind of disappear um, overall and just completely be done with. Kind of going back to your first question, I don't think ChatGPT is going to completely eliminate software engineering jobs. There's going to continue to be software engineers. It may replace bad engineers, but
Yeah.
it's not able to replace the super good engineers yet. So
Yeah. No,
it'll be
I agree with you.
very interesting when that happens.
No, yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I think the way everything is shifting. I mean, there's always an upside to any type of disaster here, right? So we had the pandemic, and all of a sudden, talking to people like this virtually is a normal thing, whereas before it wasn't. It was kind of an
Mhm.
obscure thing. Same thing with remote work and outsourcing. People are a lot more comfortable with that. It really opened up a global economy for the average small business, which before wasn't really a thing. You didn't look for that sort of thing as much in the post-pandemic world. It's kind of the norm. So Brandon's got another question here. He says, how do you compete with cheaper offshore or nearshore firms? Because there's other ones obviously out there. They're not eligible for R&D tax credits, but show significant savings. Can you show value beyond price?
Well, good question. Are these live questions that people
These
are
are
asking?
live questions. Yeah.
Don't make curveballs here, man. That's a really good question. So, yeah, nearshore teams are really good. So for anyone in the audience that aren't familiar with nearshore, it's pretty much outsourcing to places like Central America, South America. Um, so we provide a layer on top of this outsourcing development, right? Like I said, I think finding the right development team is the beginning of your problems. Is not the end of your problems, right? So when you start working with a development team, that's when all of the pain points start coming, like communication, project management, expectations, client success, project delivery, accountability, all those things. Not to mention the international payments and tax compliance piece of paying these teams abroad, which is a whole different conversation that we also deal with and provide value for our clients. So we handle all of that piece. So we're not a development company. We're a company that kind of helps other people outsource successfully. So that success part is the main part that we sort of provide value, and that's what we mainly charge for as a premium on top of the rate that you would typically get in the marketplace.
Yeah, anybody can tell you they can get the job done, but unless you have qualified, like pre-qualified people that are vetted, that can actually complete the task from point A to point Z, you are taking a risk, and that's definitely a premium that you can charge for doing that work that you've already set up. All right, Mr. Li. Well, thank you very much for being on the program today. I got one last thing I want to make sure. If people want to reach out to you, they want to find out more about what you're offering, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can go on our site at aloa.co. I see you got it down there. That's the main way to contact us. There's a form that they can fill out if they're interested in getting in contact with someone from our team. So once they fill out that form, someone on our team will reach out and speak more to them about their project or any needs that they have. So.
Perfect, man. And then a last selfish question. You signed up to be on our show. You've gotten reminder emails, text messages, that sort of stuff. And then you came on and you spent the last 27 minutes or so creating long form content. What was it like working with the Business Bros today?
It's been great, man. Really appreciate you having me on, and it's been a great conversation getting to talk to you.
All right, man. That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to make sure you guys to remember.
Have a nice day.
You guys on the next one. Peace. And we're out.
Awesome.
It's over. Go home. Is your business in need of marketing? Try starting a podcast. But not just any podcast. Podcast like a pro. We can show you how to take your business from being invisible to becoming a brand people trust. Go to www